Okay, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're looking at an event defined by pure, unfiltered drama, mechanical agony, and honestly just incredible human endurance. Today we're charting the wild history of the 1926 British Grand Prix, a century of speed and survival. We're going to explore how a completely chaotic, brutal race established a legacy that we're still celebrating exactly 100 years later.
So how did a race that left drivers with literally burnt feet start a century-long legacy? You know, when we think of motorsport today, we picture flawless machines, precision engineering, athletes trained to absolute perfection. But to truly understand the legacy of British racing, we have to plunge right into the visceral reality of its beginnings. This wasn't some pristine corporate event. This was a battle for survival, where the drivers themselves were pushed way past their physical limits in ways that seem, well, pretty much unimaginable to us today.
Picture this. It's August 7th, 1926. The flag drops at exactly 2 p.m. at the world's first purpose-built race circuit, Brooklands. Just 9 of Europe's finest racing cars thunder away from the starting line. The crowds are roaring, the exhaust fumes are incredibly thick, and right there, in that specific moment, Britain's greatest motorsport tradition is officially born. But as you'll see, the excitement of that start line very quickly gave way to a punishing reality.
287. That's the sheer distance in miles of this absolute monster of a race. To put that into perspective, the drivers had to navigate this distance over 110 exhausting laps. This wasn't just a test of who had the fastest car on the day, not at all. It was a brutal, relentless test of stamina and mechanical endurance for both the machines and the guys behind the wheel.
And man, the attrition was absolutely brutal. Now, what's really interesting about this timeline is how quickly things fall apart. Just an hour and a half in, by 3:30 p.m., Easton's Aston Martin is already out with a blown head gasket. Fast forward to 4:40 p.m., and the mechanical failures are really starting to pile up. Segrav's Talbot is out, though to his credit, he did manage to set the fastest lap of the race before retiring. At literally the exact same time, Frank Halford's aging transmission gives up the ghost. By 5:10 p.m., the last surviving Talbot is out with supercharger trouble. The grid is just rapidly disappearing before their eyes.
And it wasn't just the cars falling apart. The physical toll on the drivers was completely agonizing. The heat radiating from those exhaust pipes was so intense that it was literally burning right through the drivers' boots. It was scorching their feet. It got so bad they were plunging their blistered feet into buckets of cold water mid-race just to get a few seconds of relief. In one crazy instance, the French driver Robert Seneschal was in such absolute agony from the heat that he actually had to pull into the pits and hand his Delage over to his teammate, Louis Wagner, who had been resting after his own car broke down earlier.
Which brings us to what is probably the most absurd anecdote of the entire race. So, driver Robert Benoist comes into the pits with his feet severely burnt. He has to hand his car over to a relief driver named Dubonnet. But here's the kicker. Dubonnet hadn't practiced. Actually, he wasn't even dressed for a race. He steps into this agonizing, exhausting, high-speed battle still wearing his blue lounge suit. I mean, it's just a wild mental image, right? It perfectly captures the raw, chaotic madness of early motorsport.
So we come to the climax of this whole endurance nightmare. Out of the 9 starting cars that thundered away from the line at 2 p.m., guess how many actually survived to cross the finish line? 3. Just 3. Only 3 machines actually outlasted the blown gaskets, the snapped transmissions, and that blistering heat to complete the full 287 miles. And this brilliantly illustrates how it all shook out. At roughly 6 p.m., history is made. Louis Wagner and Robert Seneschal share the victory in their Delage. But then look at second place, Britain's great hope, Malcolm Campbell in his Bugatti. Campbell drove with remarkable consistency all afternoon, pushing really hard to catch Dubonnet and eventually surging into second place, finishing just 8 minutes behind the leaders. And rounding out the podium, 18 minutes back, is the Delage driven by the burnt-footed Benoist and, yep, the lounge suit-wearing Dubonnet.
Moving on to Section 1, the historic Brooklands Circuit, birthplace of British motorsport.
To really appreciate this story, we have to talk about the stage where this legendary drama unfolded. Built in 1907, Brooklands was the world's very first purpose-built motor racing circuit. Think about that. Almost 20 years before it hosted this first Grand Prix, this place was designed entirely for speed, long before the world truly even understood what high-speed driving entailed.
The physical scale of this track was absolutely massive and honestly pretty intimidating. On one side, you had these banked sections rising nearly 30 feet into the air. That's roughly the height of a 3-story building. allowing cars to maintain terrifying speeds through the curves. On the other hand, you had a starting straight that was a staggering 100 feet wide. It was a layout that made Brooklands entirely unique on the global stage. It was a true coliseum for these early mechanical gladiators.
And like any historic coliseum, Brooklands carries its own kind of dark mystique. Get this, the track is said to be haunted by Percy Edgar Lambert. Lambert was a racer who tragically died on the circuit while attempting to regain his 100-mile speed record right after a French driver had beaten it. And according to reports to the BBC, staff at Brooklands have genuinely felt something uncanny there, especially on cold winter nights. It just adds this haunting, fascinating layer to the track's incredible history.
All right, let's shift gears to Section 2, the 2026 Centenary Celebration, 100 years in the making.
Let's fast forward exactly 1 century and see how this builds a fascinating contrast between 2 totally different eras. In 1926, we saw raw grit, burnt feet, mechanical failure, and guys hopping into race cars in lounge suits. Versus 2026? Well, we see polished luxury, dedicated hospitality areas, curated food, and interactive racing sims. It is a pretty stunning evolution from raw survival to polished spectacle.
But man, the spectacle they've put together for 2026 is truly incredible. This event brings together the largest gathering of Grand Prix cars in a single space, over 100 vehicles spanning a century. We're talking everything from those pioneering historic machines all the way up to modern Formula One cars. There are live demos happening right next door on the Mercedes-Benz World Circuit, a curated 1920s themed atmosphere, live music, the whole shebang. Unsurprisingly, because it's such a once-in-a-generation occasion, it is officially completely sold out.
So the crucial point here is how you safely manage an event of this massive scale today, which is obviously a far cry from the freewheeling days of 1926. The logistics are super organized. Visitors need mandatory pre-booked tickets. You can't just show up at the door. To manage traffic, they're offering free Falcon Bus park and ride travel straight to the entrance. And, reflecting modern realities, there are enhanced bag checks in operation, plus a strict no drone and no weapon policy. It's all about ensuring the safety of both the drivers and the thousands of fans.
Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. Over the last century, we've perfected the engineering, we've streamlined the hospitality, and we've completely locked down the logistics. We now have perfect hospitality and flawless machines. But have we lost the raw, lounge suit-wearing madness that made the original heroes such legends? It's definitely something to think about the next time you sit down to watch a modern Grand Prix. Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer. Keep learning and keep questioning what it really takes to make history.